that was the intro for Your Hood's a Joke. Wonderful, diverse, cartoon animated.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was great.
Fantastic. Welcome to episode 2 of Your Hood's a Joke. We've got comedians Bobby Knauff and Rahil Shaikh.
Thank you for having me, man.
No problem. Both of you have been on Your Hood's a Joke, the live show.
Yes.
So you're very well versed in what happens here. So for our new listeners, just a quick recap. This is a podcast that is an offshoot of the live roast battle show we've been running in Canada for a little while. It used to be just Toronto. Now it's moving to Winnipeg, Montreal, a whole bunch of places. So it's doing well. Yeah. However, it is an uncensored roast battle between comedians who represent different territories, countries, cities, what have you. So we say a lot of horrible things to each other.
As you should.
In the name of comedy. So if you are somewhat sensitive to roast jokes or dark comedy, I would recommend that you peace out right now. Because the things we say are completely unacceptable in polite company. However, sometimes they're cathartic. They need to be said, you know? A lot of people find a lot of solace in, just a little comfort in describing the day-to-day shit that they have to go through with a little joke here, a little dark joke about how it's hard to be XYZ in XYZ place, right? Things like that. So just to give everybody a taste of what the live show is like, I'm going to run a quick clip as well. We will hear a couple of jokes. Maybe, I think, Rahil, you might be in one of these clips. So once again, one final content warning. We like to open every show with a little bit of a roast clip, and let's hear some jokes. DJ Russell.
Colonized by Italians, so they love food, but they don't have any.
Poland, the country with the highest number of Jews per square kilometer, 6 feet under the ground. Yoga's bullshit. It's just expensive stretching. If a guy put a gun to my head and asked me to eat either cabbage rolls or pierogies, I will eat a mouthful of his dick. And then get shot in the head.
If you visit Albania, you'll notice they use a lot of scarecrows. But if you look closer, they're just Albanians.
Okay, well, that was a nice little preview from the live show. I love that Albania joke.
I love how you put 2 of my best jokes in and everything was shit.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how some of the best, well-received clips from this show are actually very quick but very brutal lines, right? So people don't really like it when we talk about dark comedy. So Your Hood's a Joke is an example of a dark roast show, right? Dark roast, not as in Starbucks,
but it goes down just as smooth.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I find that lately, because of the atmosphere that we are in right now, there has been a big resurgence in dark comedy, right? Your Hood's a Joke is one of those shows that has benefited from it in the last few years. There's been a lot of talk. Not everybody knows this. Comedians losing their jobs for jokes or losing sponsorships in general. There's a lot of emphasis on inclusivity and like safe jokes or safe rooms and things like that. And that, I want to ask you guys, because both of you, wouldn't necessarily fit into that kind of an umbrella because of the kind of material you want to do, right? But at the same time, those spaces, the ones where there are restrictions on what can or cannot be joked about, that audience wouldn't never even come to another show anyway.
Exactly.
So let's ask you, Rahil, first, since you've been on Your Hood's a Joke so many times, and you also do a lot of shows at the Corner, at the Corner Comedy Club, right? So have you found any, have you tried to get on any of these inclusive shows, for example?
Yes, I've tried to get on all the inclusive shows, but none of them would have me on. I'm not gonna lie. And it just, I'm not gonna lie, man. It just feels like a bit, I feel sad about it because you can't get more browner than I am right now. You know what I mean? And sure, some of my jokes are about domestic violence and all, but it comes from a real place. You know, I'm not trying to make fun of domestic violence. There is a reason I'm doing a joke about domestic violence because that's very widespread in India, right? So you look at, here's what I think. I think And this is not white people, right? I think, like, especially brown people who were born here and raised here look at me and go, oh, this guy's going to do jokes about 7-Eleven or Uber, something like that.
Right.
That's what they expect. And I come up like, fucking incest, what's up, guys? Right,
Right.
Oh, this is not us, right? So when white people see that, they go, oh, they have two reactions. They are either horrified or they find it funny and move the fuck on, right?
Yeah.
But the third, like, I've especially found this with brown people, and it doesn't matter if you're from India or just any Middle Eastern country. They get disgusted by the joke.
Like, you're talking about brown people who were born here.
Yes.
So second generation.
Second generation immigrants, right? So they look at me and go, oh my God, this is not what India is. Indians are like Appu and who are the fuck that guys from Big Bang Theory, right? Like Raj, yes. You look at those guys are not, it's not the right, but those guys are not manly men. They're not angry. They're like meek, submissive men, right? So when they see someone like me just being all overconfident, which is not true in real life. I'm like a cock in real life. But on stage, right? I put on that persona, right?
Okay.
So they see and they're like, oh, what? No, I don't know. But then again, I know like they have a certain audience that have built up who don't really like the jokes.
It's interesting you mentioned Apu, because Apu and the way, just brown guys in general are represented in the media. Apu and Raj is another one. It's similar to how like a lot of Asian guys have the same complaint, the desexualization, kind of like making it seem like you're just like some meek little dude.
We are not. That's the
Well, what's interesting is, I'm surprised that people who don't like Apu wouldn't like your comedy, because it's the exact opposite of it. It's not meek. It's not all reserved. So it's interesting.
But it's like what he said. He's saying something that they don't agree with and they don't want to be represented as.
Right.
So then they're trying to turn away because they're like, hey, we might not like this characterized version of this on a show, but we also don't like what you're saying because we don't want to be mixed. It's just a sense of identity, not knowing where.
I feel like they judge me by my stereotype, right? Oh, he's an engineer. Let's see about him talking about his engineering life. Let's see how he deals with Uber rides, right? But I don't. That's one of the things when I started out, and I've been doing comedy for a very little while. That's one of the things I started. I believe I was like, I'm not going to do race jokes at all because I don't want to be. Because Russell Peters did that 20 years ago and perfected that shit, right? And like he did.
It really annoys me when like brown comics in particular do jokes that are 20 years old. I must be from Brampton, right?
Oh my
Look at
God,
me.
dude! I know like 6 who are very funny brown comics, but who have the exact same joke, right? Basically the joke goes, I was walking down the street, someone saw me and called me a Paki.
Right.
Guess what, guys? I'm not from Pakistan. Dude, are you serious right now? That's your setup and that's your punchline. And I've seen so many comics do the same.
It weirdly caters to it kills because it caters to white people because it lets that little part of white people go.
Oh yeah, I can use a Pakistan.
And they won't accept your material because it's too intense. What they don't realize is when they're laughing at those easy jokes, that's just them laughing at like, yeah, I do think about them in a different way. I am a little racist, and they're allowing me to be that. Do you know what I mean? It's this weird. It's just like pushing it out, like and catering to us of like, oh, we accept you, but you can only do that.
See, the racist white guy agrees. So actually on that note, Bobby, so actually on a similar vein, it's one thing. So the difference between Rahil, you and Bobby, if you were to do the same joke about domestic violence, you would get away with it a little bit more
because of my accent. I definitely
your
agree.
accent.
Yes, for sure.
You can play it off as I'm just telling a joke about my experiences, blah blah blah, and people will do that knowing, nod, be like, yes, India, tough.
Yes.
But if you, Bob, you were to do the same thing, it'd be like you are propagating,
I am
committing violence.
Yeah, I am. Continuing a stereotype, and I'm racist, and I'm not checking my privilege.
Well,
I'm not. I check it so often. Can I enjoy it for 5 minutes?
My savings account.
It's like a timeshare. I don't ever actually get to use it, but I have to keep checking in on it.
I was talking about this with a bunch of different like straight white male comics, right? And one thing I guess it came to me just a couple of months ago is, it is true that now, when you look at a lineup on a comedy show, whether it's especially the bigger shows, like, festivals, $30,000 comedy competitions where you win a bunch of money and you do all this, you get all these shows, there is, representation is a part of it. They want X, Y, Z groups, everybody to be in, and which is fine if they're funny. I mean, if they're funny, I don't mind. And there's a historical reason for it. There's a very real reason why, historically, you've had, for example, in the arts, you have male and female categories. Like, you don't need that in the arts. Like Chris Rock said that a couple years ago when he was hosting the Oscars. Why do you need best actor and best actress?
Yeah.
It's acting. It's
like
not
one of them
sport.
was the best role of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
And
But the
then we could-
reason is because historically, if you didn't have that separation, like the Academy and the voters would
never
never pick
nominate a
women.
woman,
Yeah,
ever.
exactly.
Oh my God.
So
And
you
that's
have-
why
yeah.
categories,
yeah.
and that's why categories that don't do that, you see no women getting nominated.
Exactly.
That's why Catherine Bigelow was the first woman to
Direct-
win an Oscar in
Yeah.
2000
Yeah,
and something.
there was no
Isn't
best
that
female.
bonkers?
Yeah, exactly. There was no best female director, right? It was just best director. So
Yeah.
look how what took 80 something years for
Yeah,
a woman
Catherine
to win.
Bigelow for Hurt Locker.
Hurt Locker, yeah.
Yeah.
well,
That was
Yeah.
the first woman
Yeah.
to win
So that-
I don't know how I know that though, because I'm a misogynist. But
well, that's my point. Is that there is a reason why people create, categories that have to be filled. Is because historically, whatever you want to call it, old school racism and old school misogyny, and in 2018, it'd be something more like implied or implicit, something you might not even notice that you're doing when you're picking your nominees or when you're voting for somebody. So there are like intellectual and real reasons for doing
But at the
that.
cost of talent? I mean,
Well,
it's
no,
not
see.
everyone is, I know, but
Yeah.
yeah, you know what, not
That's
everyone's
when
on-
you end up overcorrecting, right?
yes,
And-
Yes,
because
that's
it's
what
like
yeah.
these people have not been able to have a chance to be heard,
Mm-hmm.
and now because we're trying to make up for that, we give them too much.
Yeah,
we
you're
end up-
Oh
putting
my God,
shitty
that's gonna be
comics on.
fucking. That's gonna be. Everyone's gonna label me for that. We give them too much. That I'm gonna be known for that. But that's it. It's like these people haven't been heard. There's
Mm-hmm.
an audience for them. People want to hear them. Like that's how Russell Peters exploded.
Yeah.
He tapped into a market that wasn't
Yes.
being talked to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they were like, wow, we've been watching all these comedians for years and we've been connecting with them, but they don't speak for us
Yeah,
or with
no,
us.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
he exploded. And then it was like, and then people saw that as like, oh, we can make money off this too.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
the other thing people don't realize. This whole thing in these festivals and stuff, and people are like, no, it's good we're getting in this and that. Yeah, that festival makes money. They're using you as a marketing tool
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
just as much as you.
Use them for credit.
There was-
Exactly. You think it's this like, I got this credit because I earned it
Mm-hmm.
and I'm speaking for these people. No, you help them on the poster because it looks like a college brochure now.
There was
Like we
yeah.
got an Indian guy, we got a
this is
Chinese
depressing.
lady, we got a guy in a
Oh, I like
wheelchair.
it. I was
Like,
looking forward to performing on festivals one day, but now that you've broken it down.
You know,
well, that's the other thing. Sorry, really quick. I was
go
telling
ahead,
that
go
to
ahead.
people because a lot of people are mad at me for different reasons or things I say in jokes, and they're like, you know how hard it is. You know how hard it is. I'm like, no offense, I've been doing this longer than you.
Yes.
And Winnipeg Festival, when I started, was white guys. So I was like, tight, I'm getting in that in 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the whole culture and everything changed, which I am fine with because it's the changing of the times. But for people to tell me, you know how hard it is, you know how hard it is, I'm like, you've been doing this 3 years and you have 2 Winnipeg fucking credits and I don't have any. Check it out for a minute before
This-
you tell me how hard it is for you.
and also the fact that we're all competing for the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, which is the second biggest festival in Canada, but outside of Canada, like nobody
No one cares
really
about
knows
it,
it, right? I mean,
But it's
I
just
mean,
we want a TV credit to hopefully get out
well,
of
yeah,
here.
exactly.
That's what
So
that one helps
it
for.
is a stepping stone, right? And yeah, it's a good example to use because they are probably the most inclusive of all the festivals, right? They have the most diverse lineups ever.
You know
but
what? I
think-
don't think I saw a single redhead person. I'm writing a letter, and there better be a ginger show.
You know what? That actually sounds vaguely familiar. But it's a good point you brought up because there was a time, I would say maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when this representation became like an actionable issue, not just a discussion issue. And what started to bother me around that time was there were so many great comedians who were like basically not straight white guys, right? Whether gay or ethnic, female, any combination of anything, right? There were so many great ones. But the people who were being put forward weren't necessarily the funniest ones.
Yes,
That's
my
the.
It were people who were more media friendly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People who are like, I'm like, well, that person is competent. I'm gonna give
Yeah,
them
they're
that.
not just some idiot. And
Yeah,
they're
they are
spewing
competent.
bullshit.
They're not the
But
funniest that you have.
for some of us, it was kind of like, well, but they're also like very generic,
Yeah.
almost very, very watered down. They weren't as punk rock as you would expect from a changing of the times. You know what I mean? It was very mellow.
Totally. I totally agree with that 100% because I'm watching all these people that I either started with or I've seen work so hard the past few years not get it because they don't, like what you said earlier, they don't fit into what
Stereotype.
the stereotype they want of like
Yeah.
what you said of
Yeah.
like being sellable and being like, hey, look, I fit this perfectly.
Like I'm a
my
dumb
mom said
immigrant.
this,
Yeah,
and my
yeah.
dad said that. Whackity-doo. Like,
Yeah, no,
By
that,
the way,
yeah.
that's the one thing sells in Toronto. I feel if you portray that I'm a dumb immigrant, I don't know anything about Canada. People love that.
It's
shit.
a very when
a
it comes
way-
to
yeah,
ethnic comedians, like that's basically the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit
But
that
it
we
gets you
can do,
applause breaks,
right?
Like
Well, yeah, I think often it is like a bit of white guilt. Also,
oh, like what I said of like, oh, thank you for saying that. We can laugh at it, release it, and we're all gonna. I'll never talk to you again. And if you come into my place of business, I'm gonna watch you the whole time.
But like we were talking about when we were like smoking cigarettes, right? Like as I feel, dude. When I haven't been doing this for a long while, but as I feel, like comedy is supposed to be contrarian, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right,
Yeah,
but it's
contrarian,
like a bit, not completely against. You have to go like. Dude, we talk the same thing, right? You can't just go like jokes about Trump.
It's
Everyone's going to clap, but it's like one joke about how Trump is great. Like when you make people give applause break on that, that's comedy right there.
Let's not hit the table. It's picking up. We're all getting this becoming a weird clan rally with two brown guys and a white dude. Like, kill all the non-whites. We're ruining it for ourselves. But no, I mean, like it's a balance, right? And if there's one thing that people are shitty at is balancing both sides of an argument, right? So like like I said, there is a reason why there's more representation, but I find personally it's overcorrecting to a point where it's almost treating people who haven't been represented as weaker than. You know what I mean? I'm just going to shoehorn everybody in. I'm going to throw in everybody just because, like, there are legitimately some shows I've seen in the last year that suffered because their lineups weren't as strong as they could have been.
Yeah. But they were trying to fit a bunch of
diverse.
And that's right. And then I'm like, and people don't realize when as a white dude, especially if I say that, people immediately go, "Oh, you want more spots? You want it to be a bunch of white guys?" I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, it also hurts those comics.
Absolutely,
because people don't realize an audience member sitting in the audience, they see these fucking 3 top-notch amazing comics, and then all of a sudden 3 people that's like, is this an open mic? All of a sudden, this show that I just paid $15 for, this person can't get through 10 minutes confidently or without looking at notes or something like that. But they fit this little thing that we needed.
It really, it really undermines the value of, like, it makes that comedian look like the other comedian, not just a good
And
comic.
then that weirdly separates and makes people be
Yeah.
racist when they don't want to be. Because then they're like, yeah, those people are good, except for that Chinese girl. Why the hell was that Chinese girl on the show? And then now you're making people think and say that, but she shouldn't have been on the show. She wasn't as good. But then you say that and you're like, oh, so only dudes could be on the show? I'm like, no, I know a handful of other women, but they don't fit your... Hi, I'm fitting in the cutesy part.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking like Sandra Battellini is one of the hardest working. She's the one who's starting all that cast stuff for like
she's starting the Canadian Association for
Stand-Up Comics. She
Comedians.
wants us to be represented, but she doesn't fit into some of these fucking niches for people.
Yeah, because she is like
She's badass, and she says
fearless.
what she wants. And the fact that she started this thing, she's fearless and she does not stop working. But she does not get some of the things that these other people do because she doesn't fit their little cutesy thing. And she's 1,000 times funnier than them.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying is, at the end of the day, if the talent doesn't match the comedian's like surroundings, it makes people think, oh, all of that group must be not as funny.
as good.
I just want to make a quick point, right? So here's what has happened, dude. So whenever I see, as a brown guy, whenever I see a diverse show like advertise it, and like I go, oh my god, right? This is not going to be a funny show. This is not going to be a funny show. It's just going to be a show that's trying to fill a quota. Because it sucks, dude. Because there's so many brown people out there who are fucking hilarious, but just don't get their voice heard or something.
Yeah, well, so let's look at the flip side of that too, because there are several shows I can think of that, for example, there's one that traveling show, the Most Races Show on Earth. Started by.
I heard of that.
It's not. It doesn't say most racist, but most races. Races.
Oh, okay.
The most races. And
I know what you mean.
I forget his name. Neil. I forget his last name, but I think he's originally from Toronto. I think he's of Filipino descent, and he lives in the States now. But he's got this traveling show where it's like a very diverse cast. But the difference is he finds the best.
Okay.
So when you look at that lineup, you go name.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that guy, but I've heard him. Oh, who's that? I've seen her do this.
Yeah.
So it's names and it works. But you're like what you said, when you see a lineup of that and you only know 2 names and it's being billed as this $20 show and stuff, you're like, no offense, I've been doing stand-up for 10 fucking years in this city. How the hell don't I know half these people on this list? Oh, because they fit the the thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's the flip side of it, right? So you've got shows that bring in like the MRSOE, the most racist show on earth, for example, and a lot of those people aren't even necessarily famous or recognizable.
Yeah.
But Neil does a good job of finding people who are legitimately
Yeah,
funny.
sorry, I didn't mean like famous or something. Just in the comedy community,
In
we
the
know of
comedy
each other.
yes,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
none of us, no one knows us, but we know each other.
yeah.
I see your name on a show. I see your name. I'm like tight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas in like, yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so you've got shows like that actually do a good job of representing what they're trying to represent, right? And then even in my case, for example, with Your Hood's a Joke, one of the primary like components of that is having all these people from all these different countries, right? Because again, like you said, when you say something that's kind of like contrarian and everything, people get flabbergasted.
Yeah.
They're like, why is this brown guy saying all these things? Well, on Your Hood's a Joke, you've got Asian people, Eastern European people, brown people, black people saying all kinds of things that you would expect us not to say.
Yes.
Right? About each other on top of that. You've got
That's why I like that show compared to other shows that just put those, like, you check boxes on your show, but you have to
Well,
for
yeah.
the comparison. But then when other shows do it and they check boxes, it's like this weird, everyone has their asshole tightened up and we're all just saying the right thing so no one pisses each other off. But that show, it's let's let loose and let's say the most fucked up shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just saying things for the sake of
it.
There's
And
always
that's
a little bit of truth there.
And that's the other
And
thing.
also there's a punchline to it as
Yeah.
well, right? It's not
Yeah.
just
That's the huge thing is that I don't go on stage to purposely like, I'm going to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That is not my goal. I'm
never
like,
the
I
goal.
want to talk about stuff that are uncomfortable topics.
Yeah.
And let's make a bridge. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this stuff. No one is talking about it, and we all just have our opinions, and then we just sit there with them. So I want to talk about it and bring it to light, and hopefully, that was amazing. Hopefully, we laugh.
Yeah.
Well,
And
yeah.
if I fail at that, then just move on and don't judge me as a horrible person.
So don't you think that these, because I kind of get the sense that stand-up has become dangerous again, because there was a point where it wasn't.
No.
Right? And now that there's more of an emphasis on what you're saying, how dare you say it, you don't have the right to say that thing, like some of the stuff I even intellectually agree with, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, okay, I know the history of that, so while I don't want to, and I don't come out and say, hey, you don't say that thing, internally I'm like, I really wish, like I support that, free speech and all that, but I really wish you understood why that is a little weird and you made the decision on your own to avoid that, because that's not censorship, that's people growing and improving.
100%.
Right?
Exactly. That's
when
learning and making mistakes and then like growing as a person.
When we tell people don't do this because I said so, or just Google it, it's free, Google is free, I'm like, now you're kind of being an elitist. You're not explaining your position. You're just kind of almost being a bully. And I've been guilty of the same thing because I get exasperated sometimes. I'm like, do I have to say this for the 15th time to the 75th old white dude? Why?
Oh, I was the same. That's the messed up thing. Like, I had a really good reputation in this comedy community for years because I would do that. I would call people out on their shit and tell them this and that. And then I kind of realized of like, pick your battles. If is this person actually doing that bad thing, or are they just joking about that bad thing?
Right. And there is
and it was like a light switch in my brain. I went, what a hypocritical asshole for me to go on stage and say these things and then tell people what they. But in my mind, I thought I was doing a good thing, and they're saying the wrong thing. But it's like, no.
There is.
But on
go ahead.
On the other hand, dude, I like it when people say you can't say this, you can't say that, and the only reason being because the more you try to suppress something, it'll eventually become punk.
Yeah, no, that's
Right?
so that's what I mean by stand-up being dangerous again. Where I would say before 2012, almost before Occupy Toronto was 2011, and Occupy in general, and that kind of started the identity politics era, so to speak, where people were more hyper aware of this, right? And at the beginning, it made sense. Then it kind of mutated into this weird, almost pseudo-fascist way of like living. Like about 2 years ago, right before the Trump election, there was a legitimate attempt in progressive circles to outlaw the word bad. You couldn't say the word bad because the word bad
was bad.
It had a history of, I forget what it was. It was used to describe some vulnerable group, something like that.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, that I understand. Again, the history. Like there are words that have history, but like at some point, you become this weird dystopian society where every word has to be sterile. I've seen movies like this.
No, exactly. That's the thing. It's
it
like
always starts with like a good intention, and then it ends up right back to what the
Where
thing
it
they're
started, yeah.
yeah.
Because when I see the left in Canada right now, right, when I see you have gone so far left, you have eventually moved back to right.
Yeah, that's it's a very common problem to have right now. And but again, so 2012 onwards, let's say, people got more hyper vigilant about like the way we use language and how many, and there are legitimately things coded within language that are kind of like I'll give an example. This was fairly recently, right? So there's a headline, and I forget, there were a lot of women who brought this up. The headline or any headline about assault usually goes with, let's say, woman got raped on campus, right? The headline should read, man raped woman on campus.
yes,
You know what I mean? Anytime there's an assault against women, they're like,
they're brought up, but
70
no one.
women were gang raped in some conflict. No, it should say a bunch of men raped 70 women, because the way you use language in this case, the passive version,
It's like a
makes it
hurricane, and like no
it
one's
just-
to blame.
Yeah, it's just
70
happened.
people died in this
Happened, yeah,
hurricane.
okay.
You know what I mean? Like, these women didn't just stand around and get magically raped by genies, and then there were people who did this, and we're not presenting it in an active way. We're not putting the onus on the criminals. We kind of make it like, this victim just got victimized somehow.
Yeah.
So their language is
matters,
weirdly used in this kind of subjugative way in a lot of ways that, again, I learned this end of last year in 2017. And and it that means that there are places where I still have a lot to learn.
Oh,
you know what I mean? There is that, but again,
But then that's the thing that people don't want to do anymore, is they now want to judge you 100% on that, and they don't want you to learn and be better. They want to excommunicate, like they just want you gone.
Yeah.
it's a very
And then they go, like what you
hardcore-
said, of Google it. I don't have to teach you. I'm like, well, you're the one who yelled at me for everything I just said and all my choices
Right.
I make. So maybe you have to give me a fucking lesson.
Yeah.
Because no one cared until you started yelling at me. So maybe that's kind of on you. It's like a teacher like scolding a student, like, you gotta, and then someone else being like, well, what did they do? Tell them what they did wrong. Figure it out. It's like, but
It's-
you're the one who slapped me.
It's because
now I need to know what I
we're
have
all-
to fix.
We're all children trying to be adults. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
So
right?
funny, yeah.
It's a big problem where we kind of want to point out an injustice, but we don't want to take the steps to correct it.
To fix it, or not even fix it, just to
Or I mean,
live with it.
I shouldn't
Live
even
with
I shouldn't even say not take the steps, because for a lot of people it is genuinely an issue where, like, I'll just use my example, like, because of the kind of things I post, and I like post memes on Reddit and things like that. I kind of stopped doing that because the flood of abusive comments, it's usually from like your typical Gamergate kind of a guy, you know what I mean? Usually, and it's usually a straight white dude. And it's also like pure numbers. We're in North America, right? But after like the 20th person saying the exact same thing and me having to explain, okay, dude, I wasn't being a cuck. Let me explain.
Oh, I know.
history
I had
behind
to
it.
step back from all those things too for
So
the same
after
reason.
a while, I totally understand the urge to be like, you know what? Just look it up.
Fuck you. Yeah.
But at that point, it took me a while to realize, okay, maybe I should just disengage. Maybe I should just not. So that is a complicated thing. But again, going back to the thing about stand-up being dangerous again, that kind of makes me want to do it more because, in let's say the 80s and the 90s, what were the things that people didn't want to or weren't allowed to talk about was more things that conservatives found offensive,
religion
right?
and all.
Religion, not just religion, Christianity in
Yeah.
particular, right?
And now that's
Hack.
fodder.
That's
and I even
that's
I
hack
tried to
now.
tell that to someone the other day of like, because I did that show that everyone hated, the
White Guys
Guys
Matter.
Matter show.
yeah, yeah.
It wasn't booked or anything. I actually found out about it because a lot of these people brought it to my attention.
Exactly. Yeah.
But anyways, so and then those people that are mad at me, it's like, this is just the thing that we don't joke about right now, and you're supposed to not. Sorry, I'm getting all heated about it. If you're an average person in society, yeah, tell comics what they should say, blah, blah, because you don't get what we do.
Right.
But we are in a time now where I have never seen this of the policing of comics by other comedians.
Right.
It's blowing my fucking mind. Because someone compared it to mums who were trying to get rap music stopped. But I was like,
Right.
guess what? Those moms actually thought they were doing it to protect their children.
Right.
And then after they protested, and they actually protested, they didn't just write something online. After they protested, they didn't go into the studio a couple blocks down the road and record their mom hip-hop album to
Right,
try
right.
to sell it behind those people's backs
Right.
while taking away their actual job.
Well, yeah.
It's bonkers
so
right now.
yeah. So just to thanks for bringing that up. Just to bring up that segment. So White Guys Matter was a show about a month ago at Yuk Yuks on a Wednesday night.
But a couple months now.
A couple months ago, yeah. So
Aaron Berg brought it from New York.
Yeah, he brought it from New York.
It's his shows, right?
Aaron Berg.
Aaron
Neil,
Berg's the
Kevin.
host, yeah.
Kevin. No, not Neil.
Kevin, sorry.
Yeah,
His
'cause-
brother, right? Kevin Brennan. That's the guy who runs the show.
Yeah, Neil Brennan's brother is the one who produces
Yes,
this
and
show.
he made it in New York. They
Yeah,
did it
and
there, a place where that show title carries more weight.
Yeah.
Making fun of that thing, no one gave a shit. So Berg was like, "Let's bring it to Toronto
Okay.
because this city is so polarized by this shit."
And that's what I wanted to talk about is in New York, it didn't make a splash, but also because I would assume that the left-wing activists in New York understand by now that if you don't like something in 2018, the best way to bury it is not talk
To
about
not give it attention. Just don't look. Like that Simpsons episode.
Yeah.
Just don't look. Just don't look.
My personal view on that is I didn't love the title because they're making fun of Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? And that is a punk rock organization because they're against the status quo. Black people are getting shot every day. They're getting the police called on them because they're napping in a dorm room or moving
They're
out
having
of
a
their
pool
Airbnb,
party or
things like
something
that.
ridiculous.
So to
yeah.
fight against that, the term Black Lives Matter doesn't mean only Black Lives
No,
Matter.
no.
They're saying Black Lives Matter also.
So-
Don't
as
just
much.
treat us
As
just
much.
as much. Exactly.
Because you have told us that they don't.
Exactly.
So we
So-
are now speaking up and saying
Exactly.
they do.
So that is anti-establishment, and then to go up and make fun of that is almost like being the stuffy establishment guy going, well, I'm gonna make fun of that. That was my personal take on it. But again, the reason I didn't talk about it, protest it online, is because that only boosts it. It's called signal boosting. Everybody I know will see it. Everybody
And
you
that's
know.
exactly what happened. I didn't even
Yeah.
know it existed.
Mhm.
And
But I
then
think
someone posted a thing online, and this person came out of the gate being really shitty. She didn't just go, "Hey, this show exists and it's a shitty title." She labeled everyone on the show as a seasoned misogynist and racist, this and that. And I'm like, I looked at the lineup and I'm like, first of all, this when you sign up for a show on Yucks, you don't know how the advertising's gonna go, and you
Those-
don't even
yeah.
know who you're doing.
Those
So I
comedians,
looked
yeah.
at this list and I'm like, that guy's a dad and he's amazing. This guy survived cancer. He's an
Well,
amazing guy.
yeah.
That guy's a little bit of a piece of shit. That,
They didn't, but the
they-
comedians didn't know
they
what
didn't
the
know.
title of the
And
show
so when
was
someone
gonna be,
comes out of
right?
the gate like that, who's supposed to be a fucking comedian,
Mm-hmm.
that pissed me off. And then I sat there and I watched all day people fucking just shooting their opinions either side, being really terrible. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go down and watch. So at least when we all talk about this for the next fucking 2 weeks, I'm one of the only people who was like, I was there,
Yeah.
and this was said, and that wasn't. And the audience wasn't a bunch of white supremacists. And that's when I got really pissed. Someone's like, all the audience members are going to be these white supremacists. I was like, fuck you. You are so full of yourself that you think the general public knows about our stand-up fucking arguments. People are just like, it's Wednesday, let's go to Yucks.
Yeah,
Like,
well, yeah, a lot of people, from what I understand, who went that night were just Wednesday night,
Wednesday
we
night,
got
and
nothing
then they
else
got
to
a
do.
few more because of the attention it
Yeah.
got.
So that's the part, the signal boosting part that really bothers me, is because when you're like the best example of this was from a few weeks ago when Nicole Arbor redid This Is America,
Yep.
but a woman's version, and the entire internet decided, you know what we're gonna do this time, Nicole? We're just not gonna share it.
Yeah.
We're just
She-
going to tell you you're a
Yeah,
piece of shit.
because when she did that 2 years ago, the things we wish we said to fat people.
Fat people. That was the
and
one that got her a lot.
that-
Yeah.
It got like something like 100 million views because people were rage. Look
Yeah,
at this, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. But the thing is, in today's day and age, if you don't like somebody, that means there's 30% of people who love that. And when you signal boost it, you are actually giving that person a national tour.
Yes.
Right? Now, because of how much you hated this concept went from somebody's idea to an entire tour of the kind of people maybe you won't perform for,
Yeah.
but it's boosting them. And the only thing you're getting out of it, which for some people seems to be very important, is you showed everybody what you
How
believe.
good of a carer
You got a
are.
bunch of likes
I
and
care
shares.
so much.
Yeah.
Look at how much I care, better than all of you.
Yeah.
And then and then some people get free radio spots out of it
Yeah.
and all this, and then just boost themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They use a thing that they're trying to correct, and then just use it to It's so opportunist. It's gross.
It
But
is.
here's
Like-
the but here's the thing, though, right? On the counter side, when those guys were putting on a show, White Guys Matter in Toronto, they knew they were going to get a backlash, right?
Well, that they were counting on it.
See,
They didn't know marketing.
And Berg loved it. So so I go to the show
you're
and I'm standing in the
speeding
back
to there, yeah, you're
and I'm
speeding
sitting
to
in the
there,
back of the
yeah.
room like an idiot because I'm like, none of these people who complained about the show were there.
Yeah.
None of these dudes who were like giving death threats to these people were there. Just a regular Wednesday. I'm sitting in the back of the room with a thumb on my ass, like, why am I here? I feel like an idiot. And then Berg is like, Knauff, you want a spot? You're a killer. And I was like, that's a nice compliment. I'm like, I don't know, that's not gonna be good for me. And he's like, and I even said that to him. I'm like, I'm gonna get some backlash for that. And he's like, Knauff, it's a stage. You're a comic. And I was
Yeah.
like, right.
Yeah.
And I went up, did my regular jokes. I didn't write new jokes that were
Yeah,
racist or anything. And killed, and it was a regular, just Wednesday
Well,
night.
from what I understand, a big part of that show was to, like, a big premise was that white guys shouldn't be complaining. I remember Berg and a couple of comics said one of the core tenets, actually was on the SiriusXM interview after the show, where he said one of the core tenets was, we already have everything. What are we complaining about? That was kind of like he said, and then there were other comics who wanted to talk about, like, you know, their own traumas, being abused sexually, this, that, and the other. So it was a show title that was imposed upon the comedians, right? It's not like they said, hey, we're going to do this show called White Guys
Yeah,
Matter.
it's
Do
not
you
like
want
these
in?
5 guys sat around. What's the worst
Yes,
title we can have?
How can we fit
Suck.
everyone?
Oh wait, pass me that black baby so I can drink its blood. Oh yeah, Black Lives Matter. Oh, well, white guys. No, it was fucking.
I'm not going to lie. It is the kind of thing where obviously they're counting on the backlash. Right?
And it
So
worked.
they're trying to.
and it worked.
It worked perfectly. This is the most perfect ad campaign for a show I've seen in a long
And that's
time.
what I said. And then people were like, "Oh, it's bad satire. It's bad satire." I'm like, or is it the most perfect? Because when's the last time any of us said satire in the past year?
Also, nobody would have gone to Yuks on a Wednesday like that.
I
if
like
not for
that
thing.
exactly. I
So-
used to do Wednesdays forever, and
You
the
get
audiences
12
were
people
not
or
that big, and
something.
it was almost a packed crowd because half of them just were going out, and then half went, well, let's see how. And then people went, and this is the part that pissed me off more about some comedians. People went because they read all this stuff that people wrote, and they went to judge it. And that one woman, can't remember her name right now, wrote a review. Saying,
saw that,
yeah, saying like, hey, I was going with my friends to be like, is it gonna be this? And then I realized it wasn't, and here's my opinion of it. And everyone went, oh, white woman saying this. I'm like, wow, you didn't even bother to fucking come to this show. You judged it. This woman heard you, went on your recommendation because she wanted to judge it for herself, and now what she says doesn't match up to what you wanted to label the show as.
Right.
So now she's a piece of shit too.
Yeah.
She's just as bad
By
as the White Guys
association,
Matter
yeah.
show. And I'm like, you're fucked. Like these people are, and it's all people who can't do. And I hope someone listens when I say this. They can't do 5 to 10 minutes. And the people who complain to me can't do that.
Well, see, that's the danger of doing dark material. Though I'm gonna pivot back to that because, you know, when I started doing a roast battle show, I expected backlash. I didn't get it because honestly, I'm brown and the show is mostly people of color, so you get a pass. That's the new,
Yeah,
you know,
that's the
like
new-
paradigm, right? And I mean, in a way, it's a weird kind of. So the thing is, I don't think people can reach equality on a positive term. I think human beings can only reach
Because
equality on a negative term. So now what's happening is white guys are being treated with the same kind of prejudice that everybody else is.
Yeah.
Right? So in a way, welcome to the club. It sucks to be judged on your race.
It sucks, but I'm still like, okay.
You know, it sucks because what people wanted was let's everybody be free of judgment. But what happened is actually there's just one group left.
Let's not judge.
Let's just bring them back to our
well, that's
level.
it. It's like some people, because some people want equality, and then some people just want the right to oppress.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
now
it's
we're
like-
well, we're already oppressing so many people. Let's just add white guys to
And
the
some of
list.
these people that are fucking like getting on my case and everything are more like just because they don't have a dick, but they have more privilege than me. Like I've had so many day jobs since I fucking moved to Toronto, like every day and all this. And I'll look at some of these people's profiles. I'm like, your house is a mansion.
So you're talking about people who are not white but have money.
No, they're white. It's,
Oh, okay. But,
yeah,
okay,
that's what I
okay.
mean. The people, look at all the backlash I get is not from you guys or any of my black comic friends or any of my good female comedian friends. It's all these
Privileged white
privileged
women.
white women who,
Arthur Simeon recently. I don't know if you
yeah,
guys
I
know.
saw that and I didn't want to like it because I didn't want them to be like, well, he's okay to say it, but you liking it, you're equally shitty.
So
now.
just for our listeners, Arthur Simeon is a very highly accomplished,
amazing
comedian in Toronto. He's originally from Uganda, if I'm not mistaken, because he talks a lot about like compared.
Just released an album. Check it out.
Yeah, great album, great comedian. He's been on HBO and everything, right?
Very smart.
Very smart. He understands nuances because having lived in outside of North America,
third world country,
yeah, exactly, basically like us, right?
Yeah.
So his take is a little different than that of a second or third generation person of color in North America, right? And he recently posted that it was like some of the worst, most entitled people on the planet are actually very privileged straight white women, right?
And then they mask. Because obviously with this whole Me Too movement, which is one of the best movements that's come out of the internet. I don't know another one that's changed the world that much and made everyone listen that quickly, which is beautiful. But now some of them attach that to everyone else's things. And it's like, whoa.
That's a whole different
That's a whole, because that's what some of the women did when they said, oh, you did the Black Lives Matter show, a White Guys Matter show. Oh, that's against the Me Too movement. I'm like, why the fuck are you making this about you right now? This is not Me Too.
I'm always disappointed when there's an issue of race, but the person speaking on that issue ends up being a white woman.
White woman.
And that has happened to me a million times. When white women come to me, oh, that is microaggression, that is racism. And we talked about this outside. Don't explain to me what it is. I'm smart enough. I have an engineering degree and I understand what's the difference between a racism and microaggression. Don't try to, spoon feed it to me.
And that's what
on that note, we're going to move to our first segment, free speech or asshole. Because today we are talking about a straight white woman. I think she's straight.
Yeah.
Roseanne Barr.
Roseanne Barr.
So comedy legend. The reason I bring her up is, aside from the white woman segue, she recently lost her mind. And her thing would be very similar to, I guess, our complaints right now, in generally complaints from comedians about being censored and things like that. But she's an example of somebody who takes it way beyond the acceptable boundaries, right? So when people complain about comedians who say weird things or who are perpetuating oppression, etc., they really are talking about people like Roseanne. And then by proximity, a lot of other people get involved because you're like, oh, well, you said a horrible thing. You must mean it because that one exception to the rule meant it, right? Most comedians, I would say, are comedians first, and they like you're contrarian. You like to poke you like to poke people and all that. But I don't think 99% of comics believe the things they're saying. They're just saying it's this impulse. I want to make you a joke. I want to make you laugh. I want to be a little bad. You know what I mean? But Roseanne. She used that to get a show.
Yes.
So she used that even when she had this season 1 of the show, she was pretty bad. Like her tweets are fucking horrible. Yeah. I read it and I'm like, okay, so you're a racist. I'm sorry. Yeah. But she still got a season out of it. And that is a complaint from a lot of people, like on the left, is that you can be a horrible person. You can be the most vile, just racist piece of garbage, the way Roseanne has become recently, and you can still have the #1 rated show on ABC for a full year. Right? So that is where the backlash comes from, is like people do get rewarded, right? People do get rewarded for being pieces of shit because it is monetizable right now. Yeah. Where you guys come in, and myself, not so much. Again, I almost never get any heat on the jokes that I hear that you guys do on Your Hood's a Joke, right? It's usually the comedians who get in trouble. So what do you think? Was this a free speech thing, or was she an asshole with her?
Oh, so I know Roseanne Barr from only two things, right? I saw her on Green Room with Paul Provenza. That was one of the programs.
That's one of the best episodes of that show.
Yes, so I know her from that, and I know her from Norm Macdonald Live. And what I can tell you is she's a provocateur. Like, she likes doing those things. Because you've seen that episode of Green Room, right?
Yeah.
There's a photo of her dressed up as a Hitler.
It's her, Bob Saget,
Patrice
O'Neill.
Yes, and Bill Burr.
Bill Burr.
Yes, that was one of the greatest episodes.
So good.
She's dressed up as Hitler and she's baked a bunch of half-burnt cookies, right?
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so you see that, and it's like a 10-year-old clip. So you know that's her thing. She likes doing that.
See,
that's the reason she got... And I really like to believe, and that's the reason she got a season is because she's behaving that way. Not because, she's a bit of a rebel right now.
That's what I'm saying, is that with dark comedy, there is a line at which point when you cross it, people stop believing that it was just comedy.
Exactly, like the whole
audience thing.
To not, I know we're talking about this, but to jump to another one, like Gilbert Gottfried getting fired from Aflac during his tweets about the Japanese tsunami.
What did he say? I don't even.
They
remember.
were just shitty tweets of like, they were not funny, but it's Gilbert Gottfried. He was saying like,
he's been guilty.
oh, I was asking my Japanese friend, does this area I'm moving into have any schools? And they were like, wait a bit, and one will float by.
Oh,
Or like,
schools of
there's a
fish?
bunch, no, there's a bunch of women in the sea. Or I just got dumped, but my Japanese friend said, "Don't worry, one will float by soon." Like just
stuff like
really
that, yeah.
insensitive
Well,
stuff.
yeah.
But he says that shit. But because of at that moment, at that time,
Mm-hmm.
then they went, "You are that person."
Well,
And that's with Roseanne too.
that's what I mean is that is the danger of dark comedy. Is it is a
It's a roll of the dice.
but
It's
there
like
is-
winning, and then all
But-
of a sudden you're broke.
Well, that's what I mean. There is a responsibility for the comedian to understand that
Yes.
if you want to go dark, you have to bring more skill into it, right? It is at one point a failure on the part of the artist if they can't tell their audience what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So if
But at the same time,
like
and
no,
not-
there are some people who will react no matter what,
Yeah.
right? And it's up to us to be like, all right, well, that is 5% of the general public. They don't matter. They're extremists. There's extremists in every camp. There's extremists on the right, left, up, down, whatever you want to call it, right? But if you're doing dark comedy, you are intentionally going into dangerous ground, and now you're really
And you have to be
flexing your
smart enough as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I completely agree
so
with that. Yeah.
that's where I'm like, if I can't tell the difference between your jokes and your opinions, it becomes a real problem because of Twitter, we now know what people think.
Yeah, but then at the
Right?
same time, this is what's really fucked up for me is so many people are like, yeah, get fired, stop that show, this and that. I'm like, she's a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
The president gets to say the most fucked up shit ever, and he's not a comedian, and he doesn't get fired.
Well, that
so
he
it's,
should
it's a,
be.
it's a exactly
He
it's a way
should
that
be.
people are getting their rocks off
Mm-hmm.
by firing somebody
Yes.
who's not at.
That
She
activist,
doesn't
yeah.
control the country. She doesn't
no.
make
Fighting her doesn't
policy.
make any
She doesn't
difference, yeah.
bomb anything.
No,
she
no,
just
no.
makes a fucking TV show.
Yeah, but that's where she has responsibility, right? Because she has a TV show and she not supports but represents, or in her own words, she represents a part of the country that is not represented in the media, right? So she has made herself
that-
a representative.
Yeah.
So with that comes responsibility. With that comes a lot of other things. But also, if she is, and people agree, she does represent a certain section of the public, that means that what the things she says are acceptable to her fans. And if she keeps pushing the envelope, and now the thing she got fired for was comparing a black woman to an ape.
Yeah.
That is a very historic, like
Racist.
very old school
Yeah.
racist
And I think
move,
she
right?
knew what she was doing.
course,
Oh,
she did the same
she's
thing.
not dumb.
Yeah,
She did the
she's not
same
dumb,
thing
yeah.
in 2013.
She's crazy, but she's not dumb.
She did the exact same thing in 2013, and she had to apologize because, fuck, that's just a
yeah.
red line, right? So it seemed to me that she was testing to see where the line was again.
Probably.
You know what I mean? And at some point, I personally have to be like, you know what, Roseanne? You were joking, but having seen the context of your entire timeline,
Yeah.
seeing the kind of positions you take.
Oh, totally. That's where it becomes a little different.
yeah, and then
It's not like the Gilbert Gottfried one where you're like, no, you
one
just
of
were
those things, yeah.
doing
he's
crazy
being a
jokes.
shit, like not my favorite jokes, but whatever.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time believing that he's a
No,
vile
exactly. He's
person.
not.
But with Roseanne, not only does she have the comedy cred and the TV show, but she has fans who listen to her who now think, oh, she said that, now we're gonna go
Yeah,
around
she has
calling
a-
people apes. So there is a
responsibility,
responsibility on people who have that much
But then,
stature.
Can I?
but then,
Sure, go ahead.
I just need to use the washroom real quick.
We'll keep going. No worries.
but with that, it's kind of the same thing, and I'm not trying to play devil's advocate. And people fucking they label me that sometimes.
Yeah.
Just when I have an argument. They're like, oh, you're playing devil's advocate. I'm like, no, I'm not. You're just not thinking about this part of it. So it's the same kind of thing of, so why do these adults that listen to her and say those things after, why the fuck is she in charge of that?
But she isn't.
But that's why we're judging.
But this is just
So it's like-
But this is just human behavior, right?
Totally,
Like,
totally. But it's like the same thing when parents, Judas Priest, the album they put out, of,
Yeah.
those two kids killed themselves or whatever, and then people were like, "That's because of your music." It's like we put out music. It's not our fucking responsibility of what people do, and it's a different argument because that was just a song and they
But
put
look-
out. But in the song, they're talking about like,
Well, because in a song you can say that is part of our artistic output,
But
right?
now we live in a
But-
different time.
No, exactly. But when Roseanne tweets, she's not tweeting her show. She's tweeting her thoughts.
I know,
right?
and that's
So
where
it's-
Twitter is a new beast.
Exactly. So for me, when I see that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm glad for Twitter because it gives me so much more context for a human being. and it is easier to identify who's just joking and who probably kind of means it, right? So a good example for me would be somebody like Anthony Jeselnik versus Roseanne Barr.
Oh, yeah. Because
Okay.
you know Anthony Jeselnik is not.
And he also, I think, wrote a bunch of jokes for her roast a few years ago on Comedy Central. That was before he was famous, right? So I know that she seems to think that maybe they have a similar kind of writing style or whatever. But Anthony Jeselnik, if you see the things he says when he's not performing, he's like the quietest, seems like a regular kind of guy. And I can then kind of almost overlook, because he says some really dark shit. That's his whole game, right? But again, a lot of people give him a pass because nobody really believes that Jeselnik believes the things he says when he's on stage. His Twitter isn't like that. In fact, he doesn't really have much of a social media presence, right? Whatever he does is very banal. So you're like, okay, he's not a political guy. He's a contrarian guy. With Roseanne, it becomes very evident if you look at her non-jokey tweets. Just the things she believes is like, all right, this person has she's gotten too old. It's like that Bill Burr bit. It's like you can get too old for the world.
Totally. And that is not. I guess the thing is, we want to live in a time where we think we're gonna fix it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like silencing these fucks doesn't help.
No.
I want to know
Yeah,
what
do
these
you think
people
about
are
it?
fucking thinking and saying. So taking away her show and taking all this, that doesn't help us know what these fucking people think.
No, but the thing is, we don't really need to know anymore.
But then at the same time,
we know it.
that show gets canceled. At least it was a well-written, good show. Delete
Okay.
fucking 18 other.
I think we got a clip from Russell with is that the Paul Provenza one? Yeah. Yeah, actually, let's play a little clip from
But
Roseanne.
Miss O'Neill is actually a great.
Jump in, Roseanne. I don't know.
I hate hope.
Oh, it's not Bill Burr.
Hope
It's,
is fucking bullshit. And really, I think anything that takes you out of reality or like fucking dealing with reality is just bullshit. And there
And if
for a
there's
reason.
anybody who knows, it's you.
What, reality? I have my own realities like Stark. I don't really search for a lot of meaning or fucking whatever.
That's an interesting thing you're about to say.
I think that maybe it's for women that it's dangerous to have anything but a right-wing opinion.
Speaking of women taking risks,
Okay.
Yeah, I got in
that
a
got
little
brought
bit of
back
trouble
up
for
when
that,
all this
too.
stuff happened.
So there's Roseanne just in that clip says something interesting. She says it's dangerous for women to have anything other than it's dangerous for women to have a right-wing opinion. Basically, sorry. I mean, it is pretty controversial in mainstream media in general to have like conservative right-wing opinions on things. So that's the thing. It becomes so difficult when you hear her be so lucid and be so articulate about something.
Yeah,
right?
and then she's on the other hand.
On the other hand, like I personally have no doubt that Roseanne has lost her mind. Like
She lost her mind
years ago.
She admits it. She's
No,
crazy.
no,
She's
but-
like bipolar.
Yeah.
And she's got all this
She went
crazy
to a
shit.
mental institution.
Yeah.
But I also have no doubt in my mind that I think she does believe a lot of these things she says. Like she retweets a lot of weird conspiracy stuff.
Oh,
she
for
was
sure.
hard. She was so on Hillary Clinton for running a debunked myth. She kept pressing that Hillary is running this pedophile ring out of a pizza place. Comet Pizza, Pizzagate.
yes,
You know what
yes,
happens
yeah.
at Comet Pizza is couple times a month they have this weird comedy show, this kind of sketch comedy show where the people involved, they dress up as the Illuminati and they make fake Illuminati rituals. Guaranteed at some point in the last few years, some guy walked in,
Yeah,
Saw that.
saw
and
that,
went,
he's like, oh
that
my God, there's this left-wing Jews in the
and I
media.
think Hillary's running it.
And Hillary's running this pedophile thing supported by George Soros and it just goes off and off. You know what I mean? So that part, yeah, it is, and there are very large segments of the population that do believe it. And whether we like it or not, if you're in entertainment in the public eye, when you reach a certain level, your word becomes, for people who don't know any better, almost your word becomes almost like a law. This person said it. We're not talking about like it sucks to say this, but some people are just a little dumber than others.
Oh, 100%. But that's where I kind of go, I don't think that's on the person, and it should be on
when you
those.
know it, because Roseanne does make a big show about how much influence she has and how she's helping retweet this person and that person.
Yeah.
So she is aware of it, right?
But
and
at the same
yeah.
time, I feel sometimes, especially even me, right? We don't make the difference between the character on stage and off stage, right? Like my favorite series is Eastbound and Down. Have you guys seen that series?
I have not
He's
seen
one of the most racist, misogynistic pieces of shit. But Danny McBride in real life, I know for a fact he's not that, right? But just making that distinction, I feel, is very hard.
It is. That's art. Okay, actually, so on that note, talking about racism and misogyny, I wanted to bring up your experiences in India.
Yeah.
Just to give some context to what we experience here, because I lived there for about a year and a half, and I lived most of my
Where'd you
time
live in India?
in New Delhi.
Oh my God, okay.
In New Delhi, it's dusty. Okay, so yeah, the white guy can leave this part of the convo. No, it was in New Delhi, right?
Yeah.
So it's dusty and all that, and I was there for about a year and a half. Then me and my family were runaways because of a domestic violence issue. So we literally, my mom, my brother, and I, we ran away from home in the middle of the night, crossed the entire width of the country, and went to Bangladesh, where my mom is from.
When was this?
I was like 10 years old.
Oh, shit.
So yeah, so we literally had fake names, crossed the border illegally. We were basically refugees, and then we ended up in Bangladesh as runaways, right? Because India in general is not great. I am of mixed descent, so my dad's Indian, my mom's from Bangladesh.
Okay.
Right?
That's a very weird...
it is.
Yeah.
Here I'm just brown.
Yeah.
But in India...
Yeah, no one has ever married
to be
a-
mixed
Yeah, it is a
is
big
bad.
no. Big no.
It's a really bad
Yeah.
thing, because people see the opposite. If you're in India, they will see my half Bengali side. I mean, when I was in Bangladesh, people would focus
You're
on my half
half
Indian
mixed, yeah.
side, right? But your last name is Sheikh.
Yeah.
You're Muslim?
Yes.
Practicing?
No.
No. But
I mean,
was that a problem in India?
So yes. So I mean, it's not really all the times, but Muslims are kind of treated like, not everyone, but they're like, we are Muslims that are minorities in India, even though India has the highest Muslim population of the entire world.
More than
right?
Indonesia?
Oh yeah, because
okay, okay.
India, because there's 1.3
Just numbers,
billion
just
people. It's the
numbers,
number
yeah.
against of that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
But there have been points where I remember when I was in 12th grade, right? I got my certificate and I had to get it signed by one of the government officials. So he looks at my certificate and he goes, Rahil Shaikh. He's like, oh, those are not bad marks for a Muslim guy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, dude, what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
So there is it's not really racist, but it's a passive aggressive.
Well, it is racist. Of course
yeah,
it's
yeah,
racist.
but he's
It's
not
not-
calling me like, oh, you have like fucking 10 children, but you know what I mean?
No.
He's like, oh, it's a good guy, it's good marks for Muslim, implying that all Muslims don't really get good marks.
Yeah.
And I was like fucking 16 or 17 years old, and that kind of made me.
It
yeah.
goes to your core, right?
Yes,
So
and you try to also protect everyone who's Muslim.
yeah,
around
yeah.
you
Well,
too.
that's the difference between racism outside of North America and racism in North America,
Yeah.
right? Here it's more subtle because there are consequences.
Yes.
Right? You go to India, like I said, I'm half Indian, half Bangladeshi. In India, they would use every Bengali stereotype on
Oh
me.
my God,
And in
yes.
Bangladesh, they would use all
Every
Indian
Indian
stereotype
stereotypes,
on
yeah.
me, right? So coming here people have no fucking idea. They don't really care unless they want to care if they're actually racist, right? But there's a different form of discrimination. It's way more hardcore.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, you're on Sunday, the show that I'm on
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah. Comedy
Shake Your Butt, Comedy
Yeah.
Bar, 7 p.m., Sunday, June
June
2nd.
3rd.
June 3rd,
Yeah.
sorry. You're co-producing it with Faisal Butt.
Yeah.
Great comic. He
Yeah.
won the
Sirius
SiriusXM
XM.
Top Comic 2014. But he's of Pakistani descent.
Yes.
Right? If you, an Indian dude, did a show with a Pakistani dude in India or Pakistan,
that would not go well.
you would be firebombed.
Yeah, yeah.
You would be firebombed. And if
That would be the white guys matter of India right there.
and if the two of you, an Indian dude and a Pakistani dude, did that show, but in Bangladesh,
Oh, no.
the entire country hates those.
Yes.
So like,
Well, it's the same. Not the same, but it's like white people hate each other white people too.
Yes.
Like growing up in
Irish and
Thunder Bay.
Scottish.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Polish people are the lowest. We
yeah.
just like, oh, you're fucking Polish. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, and
yeah.
it's like, oh, you're Irish, you're this, you're that. You're, all those things combined. Everyone just hates everybody.
well,
No,
well,
because I remember, do you guys know Kevin Soldo by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a very, very good friend of mine, a fucking hilarious comic, right? So I remember one night, like around 11:30 a.m., 11:30 p.m., we went to an Indian restaurant to get some food, right? Like we were drunk and a bit high. And this guy who's like an Indian dude, like fresh off the boat like me, right? He looks at Kevin and like, hey sir, how can I help you? What do you want? And then I go up like, he just stares at my face and he doesn't say a word until I order. Like, dude, what the fuck? Just because I'm brown doesn't mean you stop.
you get less
yeah,
of
the silent
service.
treatment.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm still going to tip you, not as much as that guy, but
Yeah.
still, yeah. You know?
No, that's
we hate each other the most.
well,
That's the thing.
That's why I started this show, because the idea is just having lived in all these different places. I know people are competitive,
Yeah.
for sure, but like hatred or dislike of somebody based on geography is a very human thing. It goes
Yeah.
back to the first person. Be like, my rock is better than your island. You know, like my.
Well, same with like
Yeah.
like redheads back in the day, like were killed worse than like other races and stuff because we were looked
Redheads?
at
Yes.
as a mistake within the white
like a
gene.
like
you know what I
had a
mean? Like
problem.
we're
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
some
it's
kind
like
of
we
mutation.
were fucking killed as much as like homosexuals and black people at one point in history
Wh-
because we were just deemed a fuck up, a
Like
mistake.
something's wrong
because we
with-
were actually less than everybody. Like redheads are the smallest. I don't want to say a minority, but like, but
fraction
group
amongst
of
white people.
yeah. And not even just amongst white people. We're just like the rarest of the rare of a thing.
When-
So
yeah.
when you see that, and it only happens a few times, we're definitely wrong.
When
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
in like it's a whole bunch of white people and a whole bunch of black people, it's like, well, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of us. We'll duke it out. Oh, look at these 8 redhead people. Let's just fucking burn
Well-
them before we go fight the
Well,
black people.
that's what happens, right? When people fight in groups, first we fight in big groups. So like brown, white, Asian, black, whatever. But when we're left to our own devices, suddenly we then started the exact
apart.
same thing and pick apart.
Oh, that
from
was
the
my whole
inside,
childhood. Like
Right?
the kids in the class would make fun of the native kids.
Right? It's a
And-
Thunder Bay.
Yep.
Right.
They'd make fun of the native kids. Actually, sometimes growing up in Thunder Bay, people didn't become racist until high school. It was weird.
That's
'Cause
that's
we just
because
accepted
children
each
aren't
other
like
and we were
that,
fine
yeah.
in grade school. But even in grade school, it's like, oh, make fun of the native kids a little bit, and then Bobby, because
'Cause you're
I'm the
red-
next.
You're the redhead.
I'm the redhead, and there was
The
a
next
lot of
different
Italian,
person, yeah.
a lot of Italian, and everyone had like either like darker hair, this and that. So I just fucking stuck out
So,
like a sore thumb. So it was
Thunder-
like, fuck Bobby, let's make
Thunder
fun
Bay
of
is a
him.
lot of Finnish people.
Look, Thunder Bay has the biggest Finnish population
Really?
outside of Finland.
Finnish people?
Outside of Finland, we have the isn't that
Yeah.
fucking nuts?
That is so
And I
weird.
grew up with like Finnish stuff around me, Finnish pancakes,
that
saunas, all this stuff, and people were like, "What? What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know." It's because I think our climate and whatever happened when they left matched.
It's cold up there.
Oh,
It's cold in Finland. That's why they have saunas and all this shit. And
Similar with Ukrainians and Winnipeg.
and we have a lot of Ukrainians in Thunder Bay as well.
Oh, okay, yeah. For the cold climate, yeah.
It's Finnish, Italian, Ukrainian are
So
the
do they make
dominant.
fun of like Polish people?
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like in our group of friends, we got this one friend who's Polish out of all of us because it's like Italian. I'm a little German, Irish, this and that. His nickname's literally Polak.
Oh my god.
And then whenever he says something, when we're Derek, I hope you're listening. Derek, I love you. Whenever he says something, oh, don't listen to him. He's Polish. Like that's what you just do in a group. You pick out.
Yeah.
That, and as I grew up in Northern Ontario, sorry, mainly my friends are all white dudes.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
What I grew up in.
Well, that's-
now
yeah.
in Toronto, not opposite of that, but I have so many different, just because it's
Toronto.
available.
It's
Yeah.
Toronto, yeah.
And I talk to anyone who I like, and it's unless you're a dick, then I don't
Yeah,
want to talk
yeah.
to you anymore. Whereas in Thunder Bay, it's just like, I had native friends and white friends, but most of them were white because that's the school I went to,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
who I
Yeah.
sat in class. Like
But
I
yeah,
don't.
again, back to that thing where because you were mostly white, you had to pick on someone. It's our
Yeah.
instinct, right? So like, all right, the Polish kid, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's like redhead, and I'm like, oh shit, oh look at that Polish kid.
Yeah,
At least
yeah.
I can read or something.
Well, actually,
Here's something I don't get at all, right? Because when I was in India, the only discrimination we had was based on the religion, right?
Yeah,
So when I
yeah.
moved to North America, I didn't realize race is such a big thing. And
Yeah,
now
no,
I
same.
understand. Because when I see a first generation immigrant talking about race, I realize, oh, that guy, when he went to school, like there's a lot of white people and just him being a brown guy. But when I think it's like, why are you talking about being brown? When like I'm brown, I don't talk about it. But now I realize I've been brown my entire life where everyone was brown.
yeah.
Right? But
That
here
is-
it's
that
like
does
you
make
have,
it-
like
yeah.
you said, like you have a mixture of different races. So
Yeah.
that's why I feel
So
Yeah.
that actually brings us to our final segment, since we're talking about
Already?
who's mean to who.
yeah, this is
Uh,
so much fun.
Yeah,
dude,
exactly. Well, in Canada, we like to make fun of Alberta a lot.
Oh yeah.
Actually, because the first episode we were talking about, we were roasting Quebec, because
I thought that was the punching
thing.
bag of Canada.
Exactly,
Quebec,
because it comes out to the same thing. If Canada was left to its own devices, eventually people would start making fun of each other, right? And Quebec is one for the separatism, but Alberta, Alberta is almost like Quebec, but not French, you know? Because
Quebec, but not classy enough.
no, Quebec is never classic.
Well, Quebec has some art.
yeah, that's
You know
what
what I mean?
saying.
Like,
I
they
think
have
when
some
I
art.
think of Quebec, I think pretentious art.
The pretentious period.
No, you're thinking maybe Montreal.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe,
You go a
yeah.
little bit further, and it's just
But
tabernacle.
Alberta, see, Quebec and Alberta have this thing in common where both provinces, they think they have a unique identity. Quebec is French, Alberta is oil and all that, and they're all rugged, they're
Yeah.
cowboys, and they both think that the rest of the country is out to get them.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
Quebec's like, oh, you guys, you're Anglos, and Alberta's like, no, you hate our oil. Brr. You know what I mean? And the worst part is they also hate each other because they think, I'm like, you guys are so similar. You're the exact same person. You know, just fuck already.
But they exactly. It's like a cowboy sitting there and a guy with a beret. Like, we gonna do this or what?
Yeah, exactly.
I heard my friend. This is a comic called Braden Lynch, right?
Yeah.
I heard he's from Saskatoon. He told me like people from Saskatoon hate people from Calgary and vice versa. They
course.
just fucking hate on each other.
It's just
apparently he was driving his truck into Calgary, right? And like as soon as he crossed the border, one of those Calgary police caught him. Like, show me your license, and he shows the license. Oh, you're from Saskatoon. You're one of those sheep fuckers.
Oh,
Sheep. He's like, what? And he told me,
guaranteed there's equal amount of sheep fuckers in Calgary.
Well,
and they have the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah,
They're
but-
fucking bulls, sheep, horses.
Yeah, but he told me he called me sheep fucker, but we in Saskatoon call them cow fuckers because they have so many ranches
and
there.
they use their tar sands for
Yeah.
lube. There you go. Well, just a little bit of that all natural luberito.
So many guys I went to like high school with and everything went out there to
Yeah.
get jobs.
Mhm.
And they get a shit ton of money, but they're still dumb. So they don't know what to do with the money. So they come back and they got a huge truck and they put balls on their truck. You seen that?
Yes, I.
Yes,
Okay.
I've seen that.
That it happens every once in a while in Toronto. That's every third truck
my
in Thunder
God.
Bay.
Oh.
Every single. If you see a truck with nuts hanging from it, you're like, oh, you did some oil and you have so much cocaine in
I
your
heard-
glove box and have not paid your child support.
I heard the weirdest thing about dudes from Alberta from this girl I was seeing like a few years ago, right? So she said that amongst and her girlfriends actually talked about this. She said amongst all the guys in Canada that they dated, guys from Alberta have the most tendency towards bestiality.
Oh my!
It's so fucked up. This one girl said,
Because it's not. You know why? Because Alberta is a little rockier. You can't fuck animals in the prairies. People will catch you. It's like, is that mile down the road? Is Ted fucking a sheep?
It's a
Whereas in Alberta, it's mountain, so you can just be like,
Behind
I'm
the
just gonna go behind this rock and just have my way.
So this one girl, I swear to God, this is the story she told me. So she said she hooked up with this guy from Alberta, but it was here, right? And they go back to her place, and they're fooling around. So he tied her up, right? And then he noticed
As
like
you do.
Yeah. He noticed like a dog bowl or something, and he's like, "Whose is that?" And she's like, "Oh, that's my dog. My sister's watching him or something. The dog wasn't at home." And then he's like, "Oh, you're lucky your dog isn't home." And she's like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, then I would have." And then she just shut him up. She's like, "Untie me right this fucking second." Because he was like, he tied her up and he was doing stuff, and then he started talking about a dog, and you're lucky the dog. I'm like, what? And she said that was such a common thing, like just in like weird conversations out in the bushes when you're having a party, and like all these guys from like the middle, like out, not like Calgary or even Edmonton, just like fucking nowhere Alberta,
fucking like
bringing up sheep and dogs and goats for
Moose
no
Jaw in
fucking
Alberta?
weird,
I
especially
think
when
so.
they're getting drunk. So what the fuck is wrong with Alberta? I don't know what the fuck is going on there, but
man, we make beef and we fuck that beef.
yeah, exactly.
That's why it's so tasty.
Exactly, it's tender. It's been
I ate a
tender.
lot of pineapple.
You know what's funny though, dude? When I think of when I was moving here, right? When I thought of Canada, the
Yeah.
only thing I thought of was Ontario. I thought Ontario was entire Canada, maybe Montreal a bit. Calgary, Saskatchewan. I didn't even know this place existed.
That's actually part of their complaint, right? This
Yeah,
is
like, no
this
one-
is like Upper Canada.
Yeah, no one knows about it.
Yeah, Ontario and whatnot. Even though it's lower in the map, it's called Upper Canada because it's like the hoity-toity people.
Oh, okay.
When people think of Canada, they think of like BC and Ontario.
Yeah, yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
they don't think of like the people in the middle, like
Yeah.
farmers, ranchers. They don't think about fishermen on the East Coast. That's a whole different like
That's why
way.
Doug Ford is going to get elected.
Ugh, fingers crossed. No, hopefully not. Book a beer. That's a platform. Okay, sweet. Well, on that note, I'm gonna cut it right here. It's a fun little discussion about dark comedy and being racist towards everybody and all that. Yeah, this was fun. Probably do it again. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Oh, it's the end, man. I
Yeah.
had so much.
This was
Dude,
the
this
best.
went off
Yeah.
so soon.
I didn't even get to my manifesto.
Exactly.
Where is it?
Future school shooter Bobby Knauff.
Basically, white guys matter more. But you know that.
Yeah. We're gonna
You live in the world.
We're gonna test my immunity with this show. See how much I can. Rahil Shaikh,
Look.
we're doing a show this Sunday at Comedy
Sunday, yeah.
Bar. Everybody check it out. My name's Danish Anwar. Thanks for listening.
Can I
Have
plug something
a
really
great day.
quick?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to be in the Toronto Festival of Clowns as
Ooh,
the
yeah.
Two Sues.
in drag, yes.
Yeah, in drag. because I like to culturally
I
appropriate.
saw you this time at Two Sus at I Had J Awards last year. I couldn't not
Amazing.
fucking
They-
believe that. Man.
They are like my favorite
What's
outlet.
the date?
So the dates, actually tonight is the cabaret show with a bunch of acts for the Clown Fest. But our first show is tomorrow night, Thursday at 8:30, and then we have a show Saturday at 4, and a show on Sunday at 8:30,
basically
and
you're
all
trying-
at the Monarch Tavern.
Nice.
Okay,
Monarch Tavern last weekend of May. Check out the Festival of Clowns. My name's Danish Anwar. Thanks for listening and good night. And don't sue us, please. Thanks. Bye.
Or we'll sue you.